Here.
Here.
Here? I think he's in the back. He'll be up front in a
I'll
minute.
say here for him.
Commissioner Piniano did tell us she would be absent today.
Okay.
Aguilar.
Here. Okay. Please stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here. Mr. Whitlatch has joined us for the record. Okay, item 2 is a public comment. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. Under state law, matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the Planning Commission at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for Planning Commission consideration, so that all interested parties have an opportunity to speak. Any person addressing the Planning Commission may be limited at the discretion of the chair. At all times, please use your microphone and state your name and address for the record. Is there anybody that would like to address the Planning Commission on anything that is not on the agenda today? Okay, seeing none. Move to item 3, which is approval of the minutes for October 8th, 2014.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
One correction,
Yes, go ahead.
Chair, I don't think I was at that meeting.
Right, and it shows that you were present?
Right.
Okay,
Correct that.
okay, that'll be corrected. Got a
Yeah,
motion
with that correction.
With a correction? Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call?
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And the motion is passed. Okay. For the record, I see Commissioner Elliott is here.
Thank you.
Okay, this is item 4 is a parcel map public hearing. Actions on all parcel maps in this section of the agenda will be heard in one public hearing unless anyone wishes to discuss any one of these items. Requests that are pulled for a separate public hearing. No staff representation will be given on this item unless requested.
Chairman Diaz.
Yes, go ahead.
Aaron Bach, Chief Planner, Tulare County. Today we are going to pull item 4A for your consideration and a motion by you. Just also for the record, we are also going to pull item 5F for the Porterville Community Plan or Area Plan update. That will no longer be for a recommendation today. That will be for informational purposes only, and we'll bring it back at the next Planning Commission meeting for a recommendation at that time.
Okay, then at that time we'll need a motion for continuance. Is that correct?
We will request a motion for continuance to the next Planning Commission at the end of that presentation.
Okay, we'll do that when we get there.
Yes. So for 4A, April 3rd to present the recommended motion.
Okay. Go ahead, April.
Chairman Diaz and Commissioners, staff recommends that you refer the PPM 11027 back to staff.
Any discussions on that? No? Motion?
I'll make a motion to refer it back to staff, PPM 11-027.
Second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion is passed and the item is referred back to staff. That's the only item we had in item 4, which would be the parcel map public hearing. So we'll move to item 5. 5A is a public hearing. 5A is a special use permit number PSP 14-038. Ed and Lynette Vance. This is a categorical exemption and a special use permit to allow a rural home occupation from her home utilizing a separate building located near the intersection of their driveway and Sugar Loaf Drive in a portion of a 6.2 acre site in an A1, which is an agricultural 5-acre minimum zone.
There's no picture.
The site is located on the north side of Sugarloaf Drive, approximately 2,600 feet east of Posey, Idlewild, and approximately 2,000 feet northwest of Balance Rock in the southern part of the county in Sequoia National Forest. Our contact is Andrew.
Okay.
And Andrew, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioner Ed Diaz and fellow commissioners. My name is Andrew. I'm with the Tulare County Resource Management Agency, project planner to the project. As you indicated, this is a special use permit for Ed and Lynette Vance, and they are wanting to do home occupation, real estate office in their property, utilizing a separate building. The property is located on the north side of Sugarloaf Drive between Posey and Idlewild. You can see the property was notified. People were notified within 300 feet of the property boundary, and the notices were sent out. Excuse me for a second. Screen went blank.
Commissioner Diaz, Andrew, I think it is noted that it was appropriately noticed. Thank you.
It was properly noticed and also put in the Visalia newspaper for public notification. Excuse me, back one. Okay, the area around the area that the property is zoned is A1, which is an agricultural zone. Now, the A1 zoning entitles home occupation with subject to special use permit. It also allows agricultural uses, farming, and other things that are permitted within the ag zone. Also, at the discretion of the Planning Commission, it can allow a special use permit for a home occupation. In this case, it would be the rural home occupation, and which is going to be the real estate office up in that area, which the applicant is about the only one right now that serves that area, which will go ahead and save travel time, gas, and it'll be available for the people in that area because she does do that from her site. Button. This is the aerial photo. Now it shows that the property is somewhat on a hillside, and it's also on level ground too. The location of the office building that's going to be utilized is a personal shed that they use, and they're just converting a portion of the shed, and they're going to be utilizing that building itself. Okay. As you see, the house is in the rear of the property. They have a long driveway. The driveway is very well maintained. Looking at it, you'll see that the proposed building is going to be at the front near the roadway, and it's not going to encumber anything as far as agricultural uses on the property. This is the picture of the approach to that building. Okay, it's off Sugarloaf Drive. They have a parking space in their front. They have a gate to their driveway, and the building is just going to be utilized for signing documents or whatever they do. They're not going to have anything going on as far as operations or any other businesses. It's just going to be something that people come and go. This building right here is also going to be utilized as part of the personal use that he has. He's got his saw there. He uses it, and the other portion of the property is going to be, the building is going to be utilized for their home occupation. Okay. Now this is the driveway itself that they show. You can see that in the upper left-hand picture, that is the access to Sugarloaf Drive. They do have that fenced area which goes to their driveway, which is the driveway to the house. So they're utilizing the same driveway that they have for the home as well as the home occupation. This is their home. Okay. It won't interfere with anything that they're doing, and it won't interfere with the property because the use is going to be located in the front of the property. They have no waterways going through the property, so that's not going to be an issue. And any special species will not interfere because it's outside of any type of special species area by the California data. Anyway, so the recommendation is that we approve this application with a categorical exemption and subject to Title 24, Section 15303, Class 3, pertaining to new construction or conversion of small structures, and conditionally approve the special use permit application PSP 14-038. The alternatives, as you see, move subject to modify and discuss, Move to deny or refer back to staff for further study and report. And that would conclude staff's report.
Thank you. Excuse me, thank you, Andrew. Any questions? Any comments here before I open up? Okay,
Move forward.
the public hearing, and I'll open up the public testimony portion. So if the applicant or the applicant's agent would like to come forward and make comments to us, now would be the time. Please give us your name and address for the record.
Lynette Vance and Ed Vance, 44164 Sugarloaf Drive, Posey, California. And I just, we currently use it as a home-based real estate office. It isn't quite as professional as we'd like, and this is hence going for the special use permit so we can keep a more professional image here in Tulare County. I am procuring buyers that are moving from Kern County into Tulare County as well. So if the commission has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions? We've got several real estate brokers here on the commission, so actually, I've got a question for Andrew, I think.
Sure.
I didn't realize, I thought a person could have a home business by right, but I guess you have to come in and have a use permit?
That is correct, sir. If you're doing a home occupation outside of your house, inside your dwelling, and you're not changing anything pertaining to the dwelling, yes, you can go ahead and do it by right. It's that they're utilizing a separate building.
Oh, okay.
That is
explains
the
it.
reason for the special use permit to allow them to do a home occupation
Okay,
there.
that explains it. Okay. No, I understand the business, so I don't have any questions on that. I know the need for this when you're there, so if that's it, thank you. Anybody else like to make comments? Anybody at all, for or against? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public testimony portion and move it back to the commission for discussion.
Pretty straightforward.
Yep. Motion?
I recommend we accept staff's recommendation for PSP 14-038.
So that would be a categorical exemption,
Yes.
CEQA, and approval of the...
Version of small structures, conditionally approve tentative map parcel number PSP 14-038. Is that right? We have a parcel map too?
This is a special use permit, Commissioner Whitlatch.
I'm looking at the wrong one then.
This is,
It says tentative
Commissioner
parcel map
Whitlatch?
at the bottom.
Commissioner Whitlatch, if I could point you to the motion on the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, I'll do that one, okay. Approve a categorical exemption consistent with CEQA and state CEQA guidelines pursuant to the California codes pertaining to new construction conversion of small structures, and conditionally approve special use permit PSP 14-038.
I'll second that motion.
And then the minutes are wrong.
Duly noted.
okay, roll call, please.
Song,
Yes.
Billings,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Diaz,
Yes.
Whitlatch,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes. And the motion is passed. Okay, moving on to 5B. 5B is a special use permit number PSP 14-048, MSA Limited Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless, with Tawny Parr. The categorical exemption and special use permit to allow a 75-foot tall monopole type wireless communication facility with 12 antennae and one microwave dish and support equipment on a 1,600 square foot leased portion of a 6.55 acre site in an RA 43 zone. The site is located approximately 500 feet east of intersection of Sierra Drive and South Fork Drive in Three Rivers. And Dana is our contact here.
Good morning.
Excuse me, Dana. Velma, is there? Velma? Velma, do we have everything under control here?
Yes, we were
Okay.
having problems with the computer screen.
I see. Okay. Well, okay, Dana, sorry. Move on.
Good morning, Chairman Diaz, Commissioners. As mentioned, this is a
75-foot tall monopole pipe cell tower with 12 antennas and 1 microwave dish, and the support equipment on a 1,600 square foot portion of a 6.5 acre site in Three Rivers. This is the CEQA finding is a categorical exemption consistent with CEQA. California Code Regulations, Section 15303, Class 3, pertaining to new construction. The project is compatible with this exemption because a monopole will be erected on a 1,600 square foot portion of the 6.5 acre site and does not involve the use of hazardous substances and does not exceed 2,500 square feet in floor area. Entitlement for this project is found in Section 16 of the Ordinance Code, which allows radio, microwave, and television towers in the RA zone, subject to approval of a special use permit when the tower is 75 feet high and less if located in an urban development boundary. Project is consistent with the following general plan policies, as you see on the screen. It's located approximately 500 feet east of the intersection of Sierra Drive, which is State Route 198, and South Fork Drive in Three Rivers. And this is the project site. It is zoned RA43, which is a rural residential zone. The surrounding properties are RA43 and C2SC, which is a commercial zone to the west, which is along SR 198. An aerial view of the property. The tower would be located on a hilltop approximately 500 feet from the edge of the right-of-way of SR 198, which is a candidate state scenic highway and designated county scenic road. The scenic corridor element policy is to minimize the obstruction of views during the review of discretionary approvals. The setback for a scenic corridor is typically within 660 feet of the edge of the right-of-way, and that is when we are proposing a zone change. But this is not a proposed zone change, and it is off of South Fork Drive. And we do have some photo simulations that the applicant provided to us. And this first one is a photo simulation looking northeast across SR 198. And this arrow, well, you can't, it's not showing up on the screen, but the second photo where the arrow up, that is where the proposed tower is. And this one is difficult to see. More visible here, the arrow, second lower photograph. You can see underneath the wires on the top of the hillside there.
Dana, can you use the arrow from the mouse to...
I'm trying, it's not working. So where the white lettering is, there's a little arrow pointing to the tower. And this is not working, so. And this is another view from looking south along South Fork Drive, I believe.
But give me a reference point on any of those pictures, like a telephone pole to the left.
Oh, this,
Very first one, you could see it.
is there one on the,
Far away.
well,
The first
It's
picture
not
in
showing.
your packet has an arrow, so you can see where it goes.
but it is a 75-foot tower. Okay, can we move on? This is the site plan, and this is an existing road off of South Fork Drive. An aerial view of the site plan with the equipment shelter and the fencing. The project will be fully enclosed within a prefabricated equipment shelter and will be mounted on a concrete foundation. A diesel generator is proposed for emergency backup. The generator will be operated once per week during regular business hours for 20 minutes for routine maintenance. The 600 square foot leased area will be fenced with a 6-foot high chain link, topped with barbed wire and 12-foot wide locked gates for access. There is enough space within the leased area to be utilized by vehicles visiting the site. This facility is unmanned and will have periodic maintenance approximately 2 times per month. This is the site plan showing the elevation. The monopole will be a neutral, non-galvanized steel color with the antennas painted with non-reflective paint to match. The proposed facility is intended to remedy a significant gap in service to the community of Three Rivers and the surrounding area, and thereby increase public safety within the areas that are currently underserved. Construction of the facility will take approximately 2 months. This application includes the request to operate a temporary wireless site after approval of the permit in order to provide the community with wireless service between the time of entitlement and construction of the facility is complete. A typical temporary facility includes a mast with 3 antennas located on a utility trailer that is raised to the height approved. A generator powers radio equipment on the ground. This temporary facility would be easily removed upon completion of the permanent wireless site. This project was noticed according to the law. Staff has not received any comments regarding this project, and staff's recommendation is to approve the categorical exemption consistent with CEQA and conditionally approve special use permit number PSP 14-048. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Dave. I'll move it back to commission for discussion.
I've got a couple questions about it. You said it was outside the area that's influenced by the scenic highway planning?
It's inside the area that is influenced by the scenic highway. That is 660 feet, but that is considered when we're doing zone changes along the commercial properties that are, in Three Rivers. And there is nothing in our policies that says that we need to, consider a special use permit within that area.
I don't have a problem with that. Maybe it doesn't need a special use permit, but it is really the first line of sight as you approach Three Rivers. And every visitor and everybody that comes in that way is going to see this tower. And as much as I know they're going to try to make it non-reflective and that sort of thing, we're going to have these things eventually all over the ridge tops in a lot of places, especially in these foothill areas, because the only way you can get cell service in there is line of sight. And while I'm not adverse to bringing in Verizon, because what the problem is in Three Rivers is we have cell service where there are towers. We don't have Verizon. We do have AT&T. And I think Verizon coming in there would create a really good situation between the two companies, and also allow all the visitors that come there that have Verizon to have their phones operable. But this is a place where we need to draw the line right now on some kind of aesthetic look at this installation. And I know we've been talking about this in the planning stage, but we need to propose something right here because of this scenic view shed. The county has already allowed several places to be built on ridgetops when our 1980 general plan recommended against that. And here we are, and we've already done those are grandfathered in, and here we have an opportunity. We're putting more stuff on ridgetops, and we need to address this aesthetic element on cell towers. This is the place where the buck's got to stop. So until we do that, as the Three Rivers representative on this commission, I can't support this.
Any other comments? Okay. Open up the public testimony portion of the hearing. If the applicant or the applicant's agent would like to come forward, name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. My name is Maria Kim, not Tawny Parr, as it says on the agenda. I I work for Complete Wireless Consulting. Address is 2009 V Street, Sacramento, California, 95818. And CWC represents Verizon Wireless. I think Ms. Metlin did a very, very good job summarizing the project itself. I would like to point out that this site is completely compliant with the county code. And the equipment shelter, just a little bit of extra detail on the equipment shelter. It will house all ground equipment, and the diesel generator is only there for emergency backup and weekly maintenance. This facility is going to improve coverage in the Three Rivers area, provide good service to homes and businesses in the community, as well as service along Highway 198, which is needed. The improved mobile communications network is essential to emergency response, community safety, commerce, as well as recreation in the Three Rivers, Lake Cahuilla area, and the greater Tulare County. If you would be so kind to look at the coverage maps, and I also have some extra with me, you could see that there is a major gap in coverage in the Three Rivers area, and this site seeks to rectify that gap in coverage. I'd like to thank the Planning Department for their approval, and I also agree with all of the conditions of approval set forth in the staff report, and respectfully ask approval for this facility. I'm happy to take any questions that the members of the Planning Commission has.
Kim, how would you address Mr. Elliott's comments here about the aesthetic appearance of the unit?
The monopole itself has to be at least 75 feet tall. The area is very mountainous and hilly, and the height is needed in order to project the signal over these regions. We are open to design alternatives from the Planning Department and Commission members. I would like to note that a monopole could be turned into a monopine. However, additional height is needed in order to make the monopine look as natural as possible. That would be an extra 10% of height. We believe that the monopole, which has a much more slender profile against the roads and against the horizon, would lessen the visual impact in this area rather than having something that would be additionally 10% taller.
Okay.
I'm talking about 7.5 feet taller.
Excuse me?
10% is 7.5 feet.
Yes, and that would bring it up to 82, 83 feet.
Well, I can tell you from being around that area, these things are cropping up everywhere. So I would suggest that the county would recommend some kind of aesthetic presentation for this installation. And I think at that point, and I know we'd probably be setting a precedent here doing this, but I think we'd set an example on how this has to be done in the future. Because Verizon, I still don't understand what coverage is different from this particular installation from what they already have along that highway.
If you would look at the coverage map, Verizon has a site already located in Lake Cahuilla, the Lake Cahuilla Dam site. Unfortunately, that site does not.
Have that?
Oh, I see. Well, I have copies here if needed.
Chairman Diaz, if you could distribute those copies to the commission.
I'm well aware of the tower by the dam, too. We've seen that for several months now since that's been up.
Yes, that is an AT&T tower. We have tried to work with them for over a year. Unfortunately, we cannot confirm their electrical. We were unable to confirm a lot of their utilities, and after a year of leasing and procedures trying to talk and communicate with them over that, that chapter is now closed. And we have put in a lot of resources and time into trying to co-locate on that tower unsuccessfully.
This coverage map, You know, it's interesting because this is exactly the same area that's covered now. It doesn't really extend any new coverage. We'll bring Verizon in there.
Yes, and we represent Verizon exclusively, and if you were speaking only about the AT&T customers in the area, perhaps they do have coverage, but Verizon subscribers do not have coverage in the area
I
at all.
understand that. And so what I'm asking is that I'm okay with the Verizon adding coverage. I just want you to make an aesthetic proposal on presenting this installation in the place you are, because that hillside is the first thing you see when you approach Three Rivers in terms of any ridgetop at all. And there's nothing up there now disturbing that ridgetop that is going to be at a 70 or 80 foot height. So by putting something up there is okay, and I understand we have a need for that service. But I want to see some aesthetic presentation to make it more blend in with the landscape.
Chairman
ahead,
Diaz,
Mr.
I'd make a motion to add a condition to this project at this time, that prior to building inspection, that they submit plans for to the planning department with the renderings showing the pine-like design with the additional 7.5 feet, and that we review and approve that pine design prior to building permit.
Part of the permit for installing the tower. But if we give them the special use permit today, then they can go ahead and provide the temporary service.
They can provide the temporary service, that would be true.
What kind of installation does that require?
I'm more uncertain about the temporary service, but I know that all equipment can be taken off the premises quickly and easily. It's there to temporarily meet the needs of coverage needs of the area, and then it will be removed completely before building of the new structure takes place.
Sounds good to me.
That's reasonable there, I think, unless, John, you want to
I'm in
continue
agreement.
this and not allow them to provide temporary until it's done.
Well, I just think we need more of assurance that this is going to be done. We're going to put a temporary tower up there. What's that look like?
Can you give us an idea of what the temporary tower would look like?
It would not be as tall as this monopole, and it would be there only until construction takes place.
So it'd be a temporary aesthetic impact, and we're talking long-term aesthetic impact is what we want to remedy. And so I think the long-term aesthetic impact can be handled by the pine-like design. And we have the assurances that no building permits would be issued for construction of the eventual monopole without that pine-like design being submitted to the county. So the building department would not issue any building permits for this without that being in front of the planning department.
How long is that temporary tower would be up before the construction's?
A couple of months at the max. I would be happy to provide the planning department with more information with that to provide to the commission members.
As far as a decision today, we would need to know. They are asking right now what the height is.
I'm okay on the temporary if you give us an end date on the temporary.
Yeah, time limit is what they're asking for. And do you have a suggestion?
Well,
Dan?
the staff report or the application stated at the time of the building completion of the tower, then the temporary equipment would be removed. My understanding is that it's on a trailer and it's just hauled up there by truck. It's stabilized, and through some method the antenna is raised, and that's how they are getting service temporarily. And then when the final tower is completed, they just, lower the temporary one, they hook it back up to the truck and haul it off site.
Construction of the tower itself would only take 2 months, and so the temporary tower would not take very long at all.
Well, what did you say, just to have a maximum 6 month and that thing comes down, or
Yeah,
if it's...
because, see, here's the problem, and we've dealt with these temporary trailers as Cell came into Three Rivers, and it gets to the situation where there's a complication of putting up the big tower, and then we're stuck with the temporary tower. And once you extend service in there, you're going to tell all these people, okay, we're turning your service off. That's going to be tough to do. So
I don't-
all I'm saying is let's have a date not to exceed on this, a date on the temporary.
We can agree with Chairman Diaz, a 6-month time frame to have a limitation, and that'll be a condition of approval, which would make this whole project subject to revocation if it's not within that time frame.
Is that reasonable, John?
Yeah, and then we'll have a chance to review the pine on the pine approach on the final permanent tower.
Yes, we will work with the planning.
Before the building process?
Before the building permits are issued, yes.
All right, that's good. That sounds good to me.
Okay. Anything else, Mrs. Kim?
No, that was it.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else like to make comments on this? Seeing none, we will close the public testimony portion. Move back to the commission and for additional conversation. Do we have a motion as we discussed?
I'll make a motion
Okay.
to approve the categorical exemption consistent with California CEQA guidelines and conditionally approve the special use permit PSP 14-048 with the adder in that condition that the applicant will have a not to exceed time period of 6 months with a temporary transmission tower to in lieu of the permanent tower being installed within approximately 2 months.
And just one other question before we finalize this motion. When does the temporary service begin?
Post approval from the commission, and as soon as we get approval for any design structures from the planning department.
And
I'll
then,
second that motion.
okay, well, wait a minute. I think we need to
You have a
finish that motion. I mean, there's some additional stuff.
Needed
It's
to,
going back to staff and for review for the pine deal. Is that okay?
Yeah. So I'll add on to my motion, and that the statement that I made will also include staff reviewing the addition of a faux pine tower as a replacement for the proposal here today.
And, Ed, we need to close the public hearing, I think.
Did I not close it? Okay. The public hearing portion is closed.
And I'll second it.
And I meant what I said.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second now. Roll call?
Gong,
Yes.
Billings,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Diaz,
Yes.
Whitlatch,
Yes.
Aguilar.
yes.
Okay, the motion and with the conditions and amendments has passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, item 5C is a special use permit number PSP 14-018. Did we, are we going to need a recess here, you think, or?
No, I think we're okay.
Should we
He'll
go
be
okay?
back.
All right.
Talk slow.
There you go. Okay, this is PSP 14-018, Kane Trucking, Inc. This is a special use permit to amend a special use permit number PSP 05-041 for an existing non-conforming trucking operation to add structures, expand truck parking, and to add 3.3 acre fertilizer manufacturing facility on a 9 plus or minus acre portion of an 18.65 acre 3 parcel property in an AE40 zone. Site's located on the east side of Road 140, approximately 1/4 mile south of State Highway 137 east of Tulare. April is our contact. You have the floor, April.
Good morning, Chairman Diaz and Commissioners. I'm April Hill, Planner 2 in County's Planning and Project Review Project Processing Division. As noted, the site is on the east side of Road 140, about 1/4 mile south of State Highway 137. The subject site is not within an urban area boundary or development boundary and is subject to the policies of the Rural Valley Lands Plan. The fertilizer manufacturing facility supports agriculture, and 50% of the Kane Trucking's business is hauling manure, and the other 50% is the hauling and spreading of oil for county roads. The proposal complies with relevant policies of the county general plan amendments. with a conditionally approved special use permit. It also complies with zoning with a approved use permit. The property and surroundings are zoned AE 40 and contain row crops, orchards, and rural residences. Kane Truckee has operated on the site for about 60 years and had a special use permit for a non-conforming trucking operation business approved in 2005 as PSP 05041. At that time, they adopted a negative declaration. A fertilizer manufacturing business under different ownership operated on an adjacent parcel just to the south. Let's see which one. The arrow works now, Dana. And correction, that fertilizer manufacturing operated from 1995 to 2005 without a use permit. Discontinued in 2005. The site has direct access from Road 140, which is an arterial with a traffic count of about 6,000 near the site. Kane Trucking generates about 90 trips, arrivals, and departures during a day. The fertilizer facility will add about 8. Also on the property are a walnut orchard and 4 residences that are occupied by Kane Trucking's owners, relatives, and an employee. The number of vehicles has increased from 24 to 30. The number of employees has increased to about 30 and will be assigned to either activity. Staff will work one 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. shift on Mondays through Fridays and half days on Saturdays during the business season. Not all come to the site. The site plan had to be broken up into two pages. This is for the fertilizer business, and also includes additional parking for trucks and equipment. For the fertilizer business, the applicant proposes replacing the buildings that were previously used for storing and mixing fertilizers. There's an old pole barn. The county fire inspector noted that new construction may require additional water tank, in addition to the tanks existing on the trucking side. The existing hazardous materials business plan will be revised to add the fertilizer manufacturing facility. They will also be required to have permits from the California Department of Food and Agriculture, from the Highway Patrol, and other agencies. They'll also be consulting the Regional Water Quality Board. Here's the site plan for the trucking side. The applicant proposes connecting 2 existing shop buildings and erecting a shade over a fuel tank, over the fueling station. Modifications requested to enlarge the truck wash area and lube area by adding a second bay. This is a modification to your resolution that was given to you last week after it went out to the site on Friday. Give you some site photos. Here's the access drive to the site, looking north, and the view to the south. Public Works has asked for drive approaches to be constructed or upgraded. Here's the trucking facility showing the area to be covered between the 2 shop buildings. Truck parking by the office. There's a truck washing area and the lubrication station that will be expanded. Here's where the fueling area will be covered. This slide shows the backside of the lube station and wash area, showing there's ample room for expansion. Here's the fertilizer manufacturing area, showing the mixing tanks and delivery tanker. This is the pole barn that's going to be replaced. Here's a shed to be replaced for a new mixing area. On biological resources, there's no sightings of threatened or endangered species at the site. No wetlands or waterways located at the site. The site is in a flood hazard zone X with a 0.2% chance of flood, and Public Works recommends elevating the finished flood levels to 1 foot above adjacent natural ground. Regarding cultural resources, The site's not on a bluff or a hillside with rocky outcroppings and not likely to contain artifacts. Standard conditions of approval require construction to cease if artifacts or human remains are found. The environmental assessment officer has approved an addendum to the negative declaration prepared for special use permit number PSP 05041 for the trucking business on the northern APNs, and the project will add structures and a 3.3-acre fertilizer manufacturing facility on the adjacent parcel, and should not have any significant environmental impacts because similar activities have been taking place for many years on the site. The addendum was prepared in compliance with CEQA and the CEQA guidelines. A public notice was mailed to surrounding property owners and published in the Visalia Times Delta. Comments were received from one neighboring property owner to clarify, who was asking that the fertilizer manufacturing did not mean that they were composting manure on the site, and they are not. Additional clarifying language will be added to the resolution to include the information about the state licenses that have been obtained and those that are required, and the proposed expansion of the truck washing area and lubrication area. The applicant also asked to change the timing on conditions of approval at the end of your resolution, numbers 37 and 38, or 36 and 37, to add a few more months to construct the replacement storage building, replacing this pole barn, and to secure the licenses from the California Department of Food and Agriculture, which reportedly is running a little bit behind on organic licenses. Popularity and benefit. This ends staff's report. If you have any questions for me or for the applicant who is here.
Any questions for April? With that, I'll open up the public testimony portion, and I'd like to ask the applicant or the applicant's agent to come forward and provide your name and address for the record.
Good morning. I'm Paul Barcelos, president of Kane Trucking, and this is Kurt Fry, I'm sales manager. Our address is 23004 Road 140, Tulare, California, 93274. What we're trying to do here is just try to make it a little bit better for our employees, add on to the shops a little bit, drainage for the wash rack, and that's a few older structures we got there that needs to be redone a little bit. The fertilizer side, I live on that property there, so we're all that stuff that we're making, it is organic. It's not nothing conventional, nothing like that. And we are currently already making compost, clean out the dairies, process in 2 40-acre locations, one in Exeter and the other one in Tipton. So it's kind of what we do. Then we also do the road oils for Tulare County and Kings County, farmers all over the place. So you guys have any questions or anything?
Chairman Diaz, we'd just like to qualify for the record. What is the amount of time frame that, in addition, that we were asking, April, at this time?
From 3 to 6 months for a building permit, and from 6 to 12 months for for securing the licenses from the California Food and Agriculture.
That'll be part of the recommendation today.
Okay, thanks. Ms. Barcelos, again, these are you say natural fertilizers, or?
Yeah, they're all organic because everything we deal with is, we do everything is all organic, all certified. We're not doing like no hazmat, hazardous materials, nothing like that.
Right, because some of those fertilizers, some of the nitrate fertilizers can be kind of volatile.
Yeah.
There's no nitrogen fertilizers. It's like feed grade, like molasses, 100% pure food grade organic molasses, things like that.
Okay.
Only 3 or 4 items, not nothing.
Okay. Now you guys are asking to expand the truck washer. What do you guys do with the truck rinsate water now?
It goes into a holding pit we have there. It's all cement lined and everything. And then, we reuse that water there for dust control, stuff like that. That's what we're trying to do. But by expanding that wash rack, trying to make it a little bit, it's an older building there, make it a little bit longer. The trucks nowadays are longer, and trying to basically get everything in line so when things are washed out or cleaned out, everything can run into that holding pond there without it just running everywhere. So making everything more symmetrical, everything fits a little bit better. For the pole barn over the fuel station where the trucks come in and fuel up, now with the new trucks, we got to run the diesel exhaust fluid, which cannot be in the sun. It has to be protected Otherwise, you'll lose the charge of it or whatnot. So it's kind of help out for that too.
Okay. Just a question, because I'm curious. On do you have some sort of an oil separator or trap on your rinsate water, or are you allowed to take that water that's got hydrocarbons in it and put it on the road?
No, we do have a holding, like a solid separator pit there where it separates the oil, and you just look at the water that runs off in there.
Okay.
And pretty much all the oil trucks that the oil trucks that we wash, it's all, it's not motor oils, nothing like that. It's just all your road oils that has been through the refinery.
Right. Okay.
So.
All right. That's reasonable. Any questions anymore?
No. Just trying to make a old situation better.
Yep. Looks like it.
60 years you all been operating there?
We've been in business since 1925. That's as far as we can go back as far as a record show. I think I think it's probably been a few years old, more than that, probably 1920, I think, but 25 is what we got records of.
Yeah.
And we've always been in Tulare County. I mean, it's...
You don't look that old.
Well, my wife says Paul's 39 going on 70, so I don't know what that is. But no, we make Glenn Kane is the one that started it recently, a long time ago, and Bill Kane took over, and it kind of went on to a few other people. So I guess I'd be fourth generation as far as keeping it going. So been around a while, and always in Tulare County. That's where we've always been.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to provide testimony on this item today, either for or against? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public testimony portion, move it back to commission, and I see we have a recommendation up on the screen.
I'll make a motion that we approve the addendum to the negative declaration. Additionally, approve special use permit PSP 14-018, subject to the modifications that we discussed, which were additional time for permits. There was 2 of them.
April, if you could read that into
Have
record.
additional time for replacing the storage building from 3 to 6 months. Additional time to secure licenses from the California Department of Food and Agriculture from 6 to 12 months. To add a proposed expansion of the truck washing area and lubrication area.
And before I finalize that, is that enough time?
Well, for the CDFA, we do have our license already to be selling the fertilizers. It's just our labels for some of the products that we're waiting for. That's a new deal they started this year, so it takes a long time, and they got a whole bunch there they're trying to process, so it's
If
taking a
that's
while.
not enough time, tell me now, and I'm making it a little longer if you need it.
I'm hoping, well, I mean, it should be enough time. A year, it should be more than enough time to do that.
Okay.
Shouldn't be a problem.
I stand with my motion then.
And I'll second that.
Roll call.
Long,
Yes.
Millies,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Diaz,
Yes,
Whitlatch,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
and the motion has passed.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
There's 2 motions.
All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Be back, I can't see the clock there, it's a little dark there. A few minutes after the hour.
Okay, they're gonna put one tower up there, 75-foot tower. We have several of them already up. All those.
I'll be 70 next meeting. Huh? 70.
70?
I know, November 2nd. 70. Where has my life gone?
Look at Dick.
Lighting a fire up in Mineral King on the way to Mineral King. So the smoke is
Money's
just
up,
starting
but I
to come
don't
down
believe
into town.
that. 75% of people are Hispanic here.
Don't
Well-
get funded by anybody like that.
They're burning it. It isn't even dry.
Okay, let's reconvene the Tulare County Planning Commission meeting for October 22nd, 2014. I believe we are on item 5D, which is a special use permit PSP 11-062. This is Tulare Solar Center, an LLC with Wellhead Renewable Energy. The this is to conditionally approve a special use permit PSP 11-062 to allow an 80 megawatt solar powered electrical generating facility on 1,144 acre site across 7 parcels in an AE40 zone. The site is located along the east and west side of State Highway 65 between Avenue 24 and Avenue 8, approximately 1.5 miles north of State Route 155, which is the Kern County line, and 4 miles south of Ducor. Our contact is Dana. Go ahead, Dana. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, this project includes a final environmental impact report, the adoption of CEQA findings, a statement of overriding considerations, and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, along with the approval of the special use permit. A draft EIR was released on October 1, 2013, a 45-day public review and comment period with appropriate agencies and the public is consistent with the CEQA and the state CEQA guidelines. This comment period was extended from November 18, 2013 to January 2, 2014, so the public could fully review Appendix L that is noted on page 27 of Chapter 2 of the draft EIR. The draft and final EIR included a discussion on the environmental resources evaluated and determined to be impacted by the project. These resources include aesthetics, agricultural land and forestry resources, air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, greenhouse gas emissions, hazards and hazardous materials, hydrology and water quality, land use and planning, noise, public services, transportation and traffic, and utilities and service systems. The CEQA resolution includes findings to support the approval of the final EIR, a statement of overriding considerations, and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Entitlement is found in Section 16.2b of Ordinance 352, which allows radio, microwave, and television towers in the RA zone subject to approval of a special use permit, and that's in the agricultural zones. Let's see. Resolution number 2010-040-458 and 590 included both solar and wind electrical generation facilities under the definition of private and public utility structures. And Resolution 210-590 included agricultural zone districts as a special use permit requirement. Resolution 210-717 established criteria for public and private utility structures proposed on agricultural zone lands and lands under Williamson Act contracts. The subject parcels are under Williamson Act land conservation contract, and this large-scale solar facility is subject to the findings of compatibilities pursuant to Government Code and Board of Supervisors resolutions pertaining to large-scale solar facilities on Williamson Act lands. A Williamson Act compatibility analysis was performed for the project, and the project was found to be compatible with the Williamson Act. The Board of Supervisors will make the final determination of that compatibility finding. The project is located in the rural...
Quick question, Dana. Did the Department of Conservation agree with that finding?
The Board of Supervisors has determined that the large-scale solar-powered facilities are compatible with the Williamson Act.
Okay.
And the Board of Supervisors will make that final determination. We did water analysis for this particular project, and that was one of the things that the board wished to have analysis detailed with regard to water. So
there's a letter in our packet that they're
Yes.
mainly concerned about the wells nothing will be built over them or disturb them.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. The project was found to be consistent with the applicable Tulare County General Plan policies, as you can see up on the screen. As mentioned earlier, the project is located along the east and west sides of State Highway 65, between Avenue 24 and Avenue 8, which is approximately 1.5 miles north of the Kern County line. The project is composed of 9 contiguous parcels that make up approximately 1,100 acres and that are located in the exclusive agriculture 40-acre minimum zone. The site contains 2 family residences and dry farming agriculture. The surrounding properties are all zoned agriculture and contain agriculture and rural residences. The proposed project is a solar photovoltaic electrical generating facility comprised of solar modules, inverters, access roads, and electrical equipment. The project anticipates the inclusion of 1 or several substations and would include overhead sub-transmission and communications lines from the project site to Southern California Edison's Vestal substation. Also, on-site underground and overhead power lines, underground electrical facilities within the site, and solar panel areas, and a control equipment enclosure and maintenance building that will include space for several uses, including control equipment housing, shop space, and spare parts storage, and possibly future uses to include a worker break room and restroom. The energy produced by the proposed project would be sold to a public utility company, a municipality, or a California Independent System Operator, market participant, and ultimately be distributed to public consumption. The project will be phased and may occur over one single year or over multiple years, depending upon the requirements in the power purchase agreements. The project includes a developer agreement, owner assignment and assumption agreement, and a sales tax agreement. The project will be remotely controlled and will include systems for meteorological data collection. The project will include 8-foot chain link fencing around the perimeter of the site for security purposes, motion-sensitive lighting, and emergency signage. The life of the project is expected to be approximately 25 years, with the option to extend additional years. A site reclamation plan will be implemented at the end of the project life. The disassembly and extraction of the entire solar facility is expected to be completed during a 3 to 4 month time frame. The reclamation process will include the disassembly and removal or demolition of all solar panels, inverters, transformers, miscellaneous substation equipment, bounding structures, control building, fencing, concrete foundations, and electrical cables from the facility site. The reclamation activities will be conducted following expiration of all power purchase agreements, and once a final determination is made that the facility is no longer needed to serve the public good. The project was noticed according to the law, and staff has not received any comments with regard to this notice. And the staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve this project in 3 separate motions. First motion would be to certify and adopt the final environmental impact report as being adequate and in compliance with CEQA and the state CEQA guidelines, adopt the CEQA findings, and adopt the mitigation monitoring and reporting program for special use permit, PSP 11062. And the second motion would be to adopt the statement of overriding considerations for a special use permit, PSP 11062. And the third motion would be to conditionally approve special use permit number PSP 11062 and adopt a resolution establishing findings and conditions of approval for the project. And that completes staff's report.
Can I ask a
Thank
question?
you. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
If the report says this has been continuously dry farmed for the last 20 years, is it been dry farmed recently?
They have been rotating. They've been doing crop rotation on these properties because of the lack of water. So, And
So they are cultivating it, they're disking the soil, they're harvesting something.
they have in the past,
Yes.
but not with regularity because they haven't had the water supply.
Okay.
Go ahead.
There was a letter, and this may be, there's a lot of information here, dated June 3rd from Edison, Bill Delane, stating that there's a concern on their part about potential impacts to their Vestal Kern River number 366 kilovolt transmission line. Was that addressed already? I mean, it's June when this letter came through.
Our environmental specialist?
Says the Southern Cal Edison will need to undertake a comprehensive review of the detailed project plans, including but not limited to the project's grading plans, roadway improvement plans, and any other plans that affect Southern Cal Edison's easement for access roads. Please forward 5 sets of the project plans depicting Southern Cal Edison's facilities and its associated land rights to the following locations. So I don't know if you got a response back from them.
No,
They're okay with it?
that matter will be addressed at the building permit stage, because there still is, when you get to the final design of everything, that's when it'll be submitted to SoCal Edison. But as far as an environmental concern, there was none.
So
Kathleen Edison is the purchaser of the power, so they're going to have to be on the same page.
Right. This sounds like a systems impact study is what they're looking at from. That should have been done long ago before you commit to the expense of building this thing and not knowing if the power company is going to be able to take the power.
This is June 30th
Okay.
of 2012.
I don't know. I'm going to just ask a quick, do we have a representative from?
Chairman Diss.
We do.
Okay. I'm gonna.
You come and
Open-
address the,
I'm going to open up the public testimony portion and have the applicant or his agent come forward, please. You've heard the comments here from Commission. Can you address whether those system impact studies have been addressed with the power company?
Yes, I can. Real quickly, Gary Franzen, Wellhead Renewable Energy, 650 Burkett Drive, Suite A, Sacramento. We're working in close coordination with Edison, and it is evident that that's a fairly dated letter. There's a large generator interconnection agreement that we are required to enter into with Edison in order to interconnect with their system. That's an agreement that we have executed with them. So we're working closely in design of the interconnection facilities, and so they're well aware of and have actually reviewed initial biological reports and preliminary layouts of the project as well.
Answer your questions? All right. Any other questions here?
I have one that relates to the cultural resources. Was this project developed before our new protocol? That's one question I have.
yes, to answer that question, Commissioner Elliott, absolutely. This has been in process for the last going on 4 years. So
that's what I would think. But on the mitigation, it talks about retention of a professional paleo or archaeologist. Is that going to be a matter of course in terms of during the grading, or is that if someone out there working on the grading happens to see something?
I think it's upon discovery. So there's been a cultural study that's already been performed.
Okay. And it went through the clearinghouse, and because
yes, it's been to.
Yeah, was that appendix on the CD? I was looking for that, and it wasn't bookmarked.
I don't think it was directly bookmarked, but it's throughout the resource section in the EIR.
As long as you've got that study, I'm okay
There
with
was a
that.
question over here that didn't.
Some time ago, we addressed the issue at what point Edison will stop taking on more of these projects. And I thought, that was like 2 years ago, that they said they were almost at capacity. Can you enlighten me a little bit on that, or is that not true?
I can try. I don't claim to be the expert on their procurement needs, but I'll give it a shot. So what's driving solar development in the state currently is AB 32 and the desire to reach a 33% renewable standard. my understanding is that Edison, PG&E, San Diego Gas and Electric have all indicated that they've procured amounts necessary to meet that standard, but they also caveat it because as projects, even though projects have been contracted to provide renewable energy to them, they also know that there's a development risk, and as projects run into problems and have to cancel PPAs, power purchase agreements, then all of a sudden a new need, even though they're saying we think we're done, they have to wait to actually have the projects that have been contracted build out and go commercial before they can say, yeah, we're absolutely done.
So there's a difference between having the capacity on paper and having it on the ground.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the next point too that I would make is, you have probably heard that the state legislature and the Energy Commission and the CPUC continue to talk about whether the 33% standard is the right one. There's been discussions of increasing that to 40 or 50%. So some people are in favor of a 50% standard by the year 2030. Right now, there's a 33% standard by the year 2020.
This is a transmission project, not a distribution project. Is that correct?
That it interconnects with?
Yeah.
Edison, unlike some of the other utilities in the state, regards most of their 66 kV, 66,000 volt system as a sub-transmission system. So it's they kind of regard it as distribution, even though their utility brethren, SDG&E, PG&E, when you get to the 66, 69, 70,000 volt system, those are all transmission systems for the other utilities. Edison's a little bit different in that regard. So we as developers regard that 69 kV system as a transmission system, but if you get into a technical discussion with SCE, they regard it as a sub-transmission system.
Anything else?
So if this is built, then you expect by that time that you'll have a way to convey this power to SCE. They'll have the infrastructure ready for it.
Yeah, the project is proposed, and I think Dana mentioned this, to be allowed to build out in phases. And so there would be no construction of the project until an actual power purchase agreement is in place with an off-taker. And then the phasing or the complete project, it would be custom fit to address only that portion that had been successfully, contracted with an off-taker.
Permits would be in increments then, so.
Correct.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong though, so the system impact study that the power company does and the impacts that your project's going to have on their substation then has to be mitigated at your expense. You have to upgrade that substation. Is that part of the agreement with the power company?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, I mean,
it becomes part of our capital expense.
Exactly. So yeah. So they'll say, "We'll take your power, but you're going to have to upgrade our station so that it can handle it." Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you.
You're welcome. One brief comment, if I may, too, just to thank staff for all the time and effort that they put into this project. As Aaron mentioned, it's gone on a bit longer than we had hoped, but I guess we appreciate all the effort.
Thank you.
Hector.
Is there anybody else who'd like to provide comment on this item today?
I'd just like to tell also
just
for
a second. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public testimony. Okay.
Just a little comment to pat the staff on the back. The staff and the County of Tullare's position is not to make projects go 4 years. We move very quickly on projects, and this had to probably more to do, correct me if I'm wrong, with the applicant and the timing of things. But we're still moving ahead
Yes, to answer that question, we do move forward as quickly and expeditiously as we can on every project that we do have applications on. It's had an environmental process that also there wasn't too many changes to the project as we've seen in the past, but the environmental process did take a little bit longer on this applicant.
Sir, did you have another comment?
Well, if you don't mind, I would address that just briefly too.
Okay,
And
go ahead, very quickly.
It would be to support, Aaron's position that our project did have a number of scoping changes along the way. It originally started out with a smaller footprint. It got larger. It had fewer megawatts. It got larger. And so, in general, and as Aaron mentioned, there was a fair amount of biological, response to comments that had to be addressed. And so, no ill willing towards your staff.
Thank you.
Anything else here from the commission? Okay. We've got a 3-part action here. We've got a recommendation up.
I'll make that first one of 3 approval to certify to adopt the final environmental impact report as adequate and in compliance.
And on that first action?
I'll second the motion.
Certify the EIR as a proper document. Okay. Roll call?
Gong,
Yes.
Millies,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Diaz,
Yes.
Whitlatch,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Okay. Our second is to adopt the statement of overriding considerations for the special use permit. Those considerations for air issues, are they not? What?
They're biological.
The biological issues.
Just for the record, actually, it was agricultural. There was no way to, even though there was mitigations to reduce the impacts to less than significant, there was no way to entirely reduce the impact, even though it's a temporary impact under our LISA assessment. So it was agriculturally related.
Okay. This is a bone of contention with Department of Conservation.
And this should satisfy them. But the statement of override consideration is basically saying the project benefits, including GHG reduction, jobs, and additional to alternative forms of energy, does supersede any contentions and any impacts to agricultural lands, even though it's on a temporary basis. Ultimately, it's still a temporary enough impact to require a statement of override consideration.
I see. Okay. So, did we have that motion?
I'll make that motion. And you stated it already, so.
I'll second it.
Roll call.
Gong,
Yes.
Millies,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Diaz,
Yes.
Whitlatch,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
That motion is passed. And the last one is conditionally approve the special use permit PSP 11-062 and to adopt the resolution establishing findings and conditions of approval for the project. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion. We conditionally approve special use permit PSP 11-062 and adopt the resolution establishing findings and conditions of approval for the project.
I'll second that motion.
Roll call?
Gong,
Yes.
Millies,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Diaz,
Yes.
Whitlatch,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Okay, all 3 motions are passed. Okay, let's see. Moving on. The 5E, this is a general plan amendment, GPA 14-003, Tulare County Board of Supervisors. This is a mitigated negative deck and MMRP for the Traver GPU. That would be the general plan update for the Traver Community Plan. The zone ordinance amendment to adopt a mixed-use overlay zone and map changes to the community of Traver. In addition to the amendment to Section 16 to allow by right uses within the Traver Urban UDB. The site is located within the urban development boundaries of the unincorporated community of Traver in Tulare County. And Dana is our contact, but I see we have David with us.
Chairman Diaz,
Yes.
I'd like to take a minute. We're going to, staff will give a presentation of all the stated documents here, I'm going to move up to the podium. But if we could have a minute to set up for the presentation, that'd be appreciated.
We're going to take a break, right?
Okay, we will take a break until they're ready.
Possibility for Avenel.
Are we ready? Okay. Okay, we'll reconvene the Tulare County Planning Commission meeting for October 22nd, 2014. And we are on item 5E, which is a general plan amendment. And for Traver, go ahead, Mr. Bach.
Chairman Diaz, Planning Commission, I am Aaron Bach, Chief Planner, Tulare County RMA. Before you today, and it's with great privilege that we are presenting to you the Traver Community Plan Update, the first community plan update that's been done in quite a while in the county. In fact, holding up the old Traver Community Plan dated 1989, you can see what a effort it is nowadays to get through the process on one of these. Before you today is the community plan itself, Complete Streets program, which is also in your package, and the initial study mitigated negative declaration that was performed for this project. In addition, we will present to you the goals, objectives, and the implementation strategies for this project. So it is a clearly delineated project for these motions that I'll recommend at the end of our presentation today. So again, what we need to approve today is the mitigated negative declaration and general plan. I should say we need to recommend for approval by the board is the mitigated negative declaration and general plan amendment, GPA 14-003, and zone change, PZ 14-002 and PZ 14-003. By way of our presentation today, we'll go through the public outreach process we pursued. I'll bring up Sun Quan to present our market analysis. Dave Bryan is here to present the planning, and Sung and Dave will present the zoning code suggested changes inclusive of development standards. I will complete the presentation discussing the infrastructure, the Complete Streets program, environmental process, and the implementation. So bear with us as we get through this. But we'll try to make this go as quickly as possible. So our public outreach program was conducted starting back in February with the community of Traver. We did have a process that was outlined in our Complete Streets document that was previously approved by the board, and it concluded basically at the end of July. So after that, it was a matter of going through getting the mitigated negative declaration through the requisite process dates to get it to today. But so our outreach was robust. We did walkability audits. In other words, we actually walked the streets with the community. We walked the streets with the consultants, and we provided as much opportunities for the community to be part of this process. So it was with their blessing that we are here today before you. One of the main goals of these community plans as we move forward is to really implement our housing element and aspects of SB 244 for disadvantaged communities. In other words, we're trying to make infrastructure match the needs of the community, which is obviously an issue in the county that we're trying to address through this community plan process. That means ultimately we will be, through this community planning process, able to provide the land uses, zoning, and the infrastructure to get projects to move faster for economic development purposes, but also to make it possible that we can go and submit these community plans for grants, because they'll have CEQA done, and they will have an outline of the needs of the community for infrastructure. So that's one of our main goals. And with that, I'll bring Sung up to present to you our market analysis, and another purpose, again, is economic development.
As Traver is a small, disadvantaged community, we wanted to understand what that meant in terms of dollars. So what we did was we looked at census data. We found the number of, here, let me grab the laser pointer. We found the number of households and then the average income per household to get to the gross income. Then we took out, taxes, rents, mortgages, amounts paid for food and other bills, and it came to an estimated discretionary income of about $2.7 million. So in terms of economic development, we're not looking at Whole Foods or a major grocery store. We're really looking at some of the smaller types of businesses. And that's what you can see here. This is what's existing on the ground right now. Bravo Farms, gas station, Subway, there's a Mexican restaurant, and all of those take advantage of the local income and also the pass-through traffic along Highway 99. And Dave's going to talk about planning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Dave Bryant, Tulare County Resource Management Agency. In regards to planning, the community plan update for Traver includes a 1.3% population projected increase during the 20-year projection period for the plan. The current population, as of 2014 statistics, is estimated at about 750 for the population of Traver. Projecting that 1.3% into the future would provide about 920 residents at that time. Those growth projections are consistent with the Regional Housing Needs Assessment as provided by the Tulare County Association of Governments. Also included as part of the general plan amendment as proposed for your commission today would include a county land use diagram, county policies, and would also follow traditional planning framework development suitability index, which essentially takes a look at the appropriate location for urban development within a community, establishes a 20-year urban development boundary. In regards to development suitability, high development suitability would essentially be infill development or areas that are located in close proximity to those infill areas that would have the ability to take advantage of public utilities. Moderate or lower development suitability would be parcels that would be either subject to a Williamson Act contract or flooding or other conditions that may need to be rectified or mitigated in order to provide for appropriate development suitability. In regards to zoning, there are several proposals that are presented for your consideration today. One would be to provide for a mixed-use overlay combining zone, which would provide implementation of the general plan that was adopted by the Board of Supervisors in August of 2012 by implementing the mixed land use designation. The mixed-use combining zone overlay would provide an opportunity to implement that concept as was adopted by the Board of Supervisors. In addition to that, there would be a rezoning proposal consistent with the general plan land use framework that is recommended as part of the land use plan in the community plan. Lastly, in regards to changes to Section 16, that would provide flexibility to include by right uses or increase the flexibility of having different types of land uses be authorized or approved on a single site, and would provide for a wide range of potential land uses to be considered as part of the mixed-use concept. In regards to planning more specifically, the community plan provides for consistency, again, with the adopted land use, the adopted general plan that was adopted by the Board of Supervisors in 2012. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, after looking at development suitability, there are no recommended changes in the size of the urban development boundary for Traver. That's currently about 366 acres at this time, and there are no changes that are recommended based on population projections and development suitability that was conducted as part of the community plan update.
Dave?
Yes.
Just quick, how much of that 366 acres, I looked at your charts here,
Yes.
is vacant?
About 100 acres. I think 98 acres is a specific figure, but it's about 100 acres.
And potentially redevelopment? Existing, but could be redeveloped. Did you look at that?
That's part of the mixed-use overlay concept that would provide for a variety of land uses on a single site, would embody those type of concepts, yes. In regards to the actual content of the community plan, it's consistent with the Planning Framework Table 2.1, which would provide for existing conditions, background, a policy document, recommendation for future land uses, and implementation. More specifically, in regards to the land use element, the land use designations that are proposed in the plan, which I will discuss shortly, will be consistent with the land use designations that were adopted as part of the general plan update in 2012, and also includes consistency with those county policies in the general plan. Regarding transportation and circulation, functional classification of roadways that is recommended as part of the circulation plan, again, is consistent with the general plan update functional classification system. And as Aaron mentioned a few minutes ago, the Traver Community Plan also includes a complete streets program which provides for a multimodal approach to consider bicycle, pedestrian, automobile traffic, public transit, and large vehicles to recommend compatible circulation between all of those elements. Regarding the proposed land use plan, on the left, you'll see the existing plan, as Aaron mentioned, that was adopted as amended back in 1989. As you can see by the existing land use diagram, most of the areas along Highway 99 or the Union Pacific Railroad are substantially dedicated to commercial and industrial development. The core part of the central business district of the community includes mixed commercial as well as medium density residential. There were several areas that were initially were designated as reserve as part of the original plan. I believe those were subject to agricultural preserves at that time. The school site is located here. There are some additional residential areas around the school. The school also owns this site right here, and there is a substantial concentration of manufacturing, light industrial uses that are located in the southeast portion of the community. To briefly highlight the proposed changes, again, the mixed-use concept, as was adopted by the Board of Supervisors in 2012, would allow for both a vertical and horizontal mixing of land uses, which would consider a range of residential, commercial, and or light industrial uses, providing that they are compatible. That mixed land use is being recommended along the freeway, Highway 99, the Union Pacific Railroad, to areas immediately adjacent to Merritt Drive, also across the street from the school, and to the areas in the northeast portion of the community. There are several areas that were previously designated again as reserve based on the fact that it's been 25 years since the plan was originally adopted, and now it's appropriate to open up those areas for development. This area here is recommended for medium-density residential, this area for mixed use, and the residential reserve area that was currently adopted is now recommended for light industrial uses.
Dave,
yes.
And the mixed use, what uses could we expect in that mixed use in residential?
Yes, it would provide for a combination of residential uses, commercial uses, and light industrial uses. However, based on the initial direction of the general plan that was recently adopted, those uses would have to be compatible with each other. Later in the presentation, we will provide some additional details in regards to the type of uses that would be allowed under that land use or as part of the zoning districts, and also discuss the type of review process and compatibility requirement, as well as land uses that may be precluded from being located within that particular area.
Okay, great.
The zoning district map, as you can see on the left, is the existing zoning plan for the community of Traver. On the right is the proposed zoning district map. This would be provided as part of the recommendations for the rezoning 14002. The proposed zoning districts would be compatible with the adopted land uses that are recommended as part of the land use diagram, which I had previously mentioned. Regarding existing zoning, again, similar with the adopted land use plan, commercial and industrial, light industrial uses along Highway 99 and the Union Pacific Railroad. There are areas that were designated to the north of the community that were rural residential, compatible with the reserve classification that was provided as part of the land use plan. Areas to the south, again, that were part of agricultural preserves were designated for agricultural uses, as well as areas here. In order to implement the general plan and the mixed land use designation concept, areas that would be included to utilize the mixed use overlay combining zone would be the commercial areas, again here along Highway 99 and the Union Pacific Railroad. Consistent with the land use plan, areas along immediately adjacent to Merritt Drive and to the south of Merritt Drive, just south of the school. The areas located to the southeast of the community, which were previously designated, I believe, as agriculture, within the urban development boundary would be recommended for light industrial, which is compatible with the general land uses in that particular area.
Bravo Farms on this?
Yeah, Bravo Farms is located off of 6th Avenue, and they are located generally in this area here. Also included for your consideration, consistent with the proposed zoning, would be the actual zoning ordinance district map, commensurate with the recommended rezoning for the community under PZ 14002. In regards to zoning ordinance changes, Commissioner Diaz, you had asked some specific questions in regards to how that mixed-use concept would be implemented. Part of the benefits of utilizing that particular process would be to improve customer service, which would hopefully expedite the ability for the department to work with various businesses or other developers that would be interested in developing within the community. The zoning ordinance changes, they implement the general plan. They also provide for sustainable communities by providing for a balance between jobs and housing. In locating residences close to businesses would reduce vehicle miles traveled and promote bicycle and pedestrian-friendly communities. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, would increase development, economic development opportunities by allowing the county to respond to market demand within the community in looking at some possibilities for future commercial development, as Sung had mentioned earlier in the presentation. At this time, this particular proposal to implement the mixed-use combining zone overlay is only applicable to the Traver community as it's currently proposed. That concept would not be adopted countywide yet at this time. As future community plans would be presented for your consideration, we would perhaps consider implementing that mixed-use concept in those communities as well. Again, as Commissioner Diaz commented earlier in regards to the implementation of the mixed-use concept and by right zoning, these uses would only be allowed if there was a minimal environmental or land use impact on adjacent uses, either determined at the permit center or through an administrative process. The Environmental Quality Act will be required to apply for traditional use permits and legislative processes that would be processed through either your commission and or the Board of Supervisors or the Project Review Committee.
David, it would seem to me that there needs to be some disclosures to all parties as to what might be allowed in an area. In other words, if you've got some commercial, there's a chance that there might be some residential, and vice versa. If you've got somebody wanting to build a home, they could be, in a commercial use could be in the area. So maybe some sort of disclosures for all parties involved.
Yes, so one of the things that we want to do with the mixed use is to encourage, commercial on the ground floor and residential above. We do have something in the mixed use overlay zoning text. If you look at page 139, it's appendix 2 of the document. It has a list of all the uses and the combination of uses that would still be reviewed by the Planning Commission. So for instance, a slaughterhouse and residential may not be compatible, and so that's something that we would bring to the Planning Commission. That's not something that we would approve over the counter. So we have considered that, and that's part of the mixed-use ordinance that we're proposing.
Great, thanks.
The next slide basically provides just a very brief snapshot in regards to how the mixed-use overlay combining zone may work in comparison to the existing zoning ordinance code. As you can see by the slide, there are various uses, antiques and art stores, apartment, hotel, apparel stores. Those traditionally, you can see for the right-hand column, we're fairly limited to certain zoning districts, such as our commercial districts or light manufacturing or some of the recreation zones. The new mixed-use overlay combining zone would provide additional flexibility again, as we had mentioned, to look at multiple uses on a single parcel, which would be either, as Sung had mentioned, vertical or maybe separated horizontally. The new zoning district concept for the overlay would provide additional flexibility, or for the example of an antique and art store, where the is limited to a C2 initially, could be provided as part of C1, C2, C3, light industrial, or perhaps multi-family residential.
We have that matrix in our, I see it in the, but not the comparison, right by zone.
Yes. If you look in the community plan, there is a more complete list on page 125. You'll see that there is a complete list that's alphabetized that would look at various land uses and compatible zoning districts where they could be located as part of the mixed-use overlay combining zone.
I don't see the comparison one.
Oh, no, this comparison was just provided for as part of the PowerPoint presentation. In the actual text, it just provides for the uses which would be allowed.
That comment is duly noted, and that will be represented in the final report.
Thanks. I wasn't complaining. I just was wondering, my reading ability was bad. So
I'll turn it back over to Sung to discuss the mixed-use overlay combining zone.
So to talk a little bit more about the mixed-use overlay, I mean, what we're trying to do is implement the Traver Urban Design Plan and allow for more flexibility to respond to market conditions and, potentially reduce vehicle miles traveled. Along with the ordinance, we have development standards. We have a height of 75 feet. What we wanted to do is make sure that we didn't limit agricultural businesses like storage silos. We wanted to make sure that those are going to be available. We also wanted to have a floor ratio of 2 to have a higher intensity of development. And this is only in very specific areas, as Dave said. It's only along Merritt Drive and then along Highway 99. In addition to the development standards, there's also design guidelines on page 143, Appendix A of the document as well. To talk about infrastructure, I'll turn it back to Aaron.
As I stated before, one of our main drivers for this community plan update is recognizing it is a disadvantaged community and that the infrastructure needs are great in this community. And so, unlike many other documents, one of our main focus was to look at the infrastructure itself, including roadways, water, sewage, drainage, and power. So as far as a circulation plan, which is a mandatory element of the general plan, and as was updated in this process, we used Caltrans, basically basic hierarchy as a background, but ultimately we came up with the system you see before you, looking at the arterials, collectors, and the freeway itself, and how those different roadways interact. As far as vehicles, that's pretty straightforward these days, but as we get into the Complete Streets program, I'll discuss this a little bit more. It changes the analysis a little bit, but it's pretty straightforward roadway classification system. So our Complete Streets policy and program, again, as a required element of the general plan, the circulation element was updated for the Traver Community Plan, utilizing this Complete Streets analysis. We did, as I've stated to this commission before, go through, thanks to TCAG, with a grant that provided us funding to go out to the community, walk the streets with the community, see what's important to them as far as pedestrian movement and bicycle movement and transit stops, and come back and actually change our circulation element based on what they were saying. And so we did the community was mainly focused on Merritt as the main backbone roadway through the community. The grant was for Merritt and 6 from TCAG, so we focused on it naturally. But you can see the highlighted red areas was really where the community talked about the pedestrian movement. And so we highlighted those roadways. We are going for funding for all of these ultimate improvements as we speak today. We've already reached out to try to garner some. But as far as the circulation element, it was updated with the pedestrian movement. So the roadway classification was adjusted accordingly. We did look at sidewalks as the main focus for improvements to the pedestrian facilities. And then we began to look at the bicycle classifications. Currently, there are none in Traverse. So what we're looking to do is put Class 2 lanes along Merritt and 6th. And then ultimately, there's one transit stop. It's really easy to miss out there on Church and Merritt. So we are seeking funding for a shelter. And we have been discussing with our transit coordinator on how to improve access to that facility itself.
Aaron, could you go back to that last slide? I don't know how many local people in town work at the manufacturing and the commercial stuff right there, and it would be nice to be able to give some incentive for them to hire locally for several reasons. But is there any safe passage or safe access down along the west side of the railroad tracks to get down to those manufacturing plants?
On the west side of the railroad tracks, there is currently only Merritt Drive as far as your legal access. I'm sure it's used otherwise. Manufacturing, currently, we talked to them and we talked to everybody along 6th. We are looking to actually change through design the parking out there. And we've gone through surveying, base mapping in this process. So we looked at, where they are legally parked or not so, and how we could fix that. And that's addressed in that Complete Streets program I provided to you as the design and basically what the manufacturing folks have agreed to. But at this point, as in all these communities you'll see along 99, access across the railroad is one of the biggest issues we have to deal with, and there is no clear-cut answers as long as the PUC requires you add one at grade crossing, you lose one, and that's what we have so far. And until there are changes to the legislation, I mean, we're kind of in a bind here to make any access easier without creating liability for ourselves.
On the street to the east of the tracks, and there's several commercial activity.
Along 6th Street?
That's 6th Street.
That's 6th Street.
Okay. Anything about sidewalks or anything going down that?
Absolutely. We are recommending sidewalk for the most part along Bravo Farms and RJ's across the street. We talked to both the owners and even allowed them to be part of the design process. So if you look at the design in the Complete Streets program, we brought design up to 30%. We did need to create free access in front of RJ's. So what's in front of RJ's right now is kind of, it's concrete, but it's really a long expanded gutter. Instead of, the right-of-way is so wide out there, and the asphalt's so wide out there, it's really hard to differentiate where to park and where not to. So trucks drive through there at 55 miles per hour, but you got trucks, 18-wheelers parked on the side of the road. So we're trying to make it a much safer condition. And we believe the design in front of you is a much safer condition. That does include sidewalks, so people can move between RJ's and Bravo freely. But that was definitely considered. As part of the Complete Streets program, we also, one of the questions, and one of the largest questions we're getting in these communities right now is, when are you going to improve the street in front of our house? And so we did provide a pavement management plan, which is a suggestion from the Caltrans guidelines for Complete Streets. So anybody opening up this document and any grant funding we seek in the future will know within the next 5 years what streets are programmed for maintenance. As part of this process, too, and hearing the community, they did tell us what roads need to be improved or maintained now, and we've gone out pretty much on every comment from them and actually improved these roadways as we've gone through the process. I shouldn't say improved, maintained. Storm drainage. Storm drainage is one of the largest issues in Traver. The county is responsible for storm drainage. Pretty much there's no underground storm drainage in the community. It's all surface runoff, and a lot of it is isolated to the streets. As we go through this complete streets process, as you can see that plan before you, we are it's a proposed drainage plan. So it actually, those green lines represent pipes. The school site that Dave suggested earlier that was in the middle of the community could serve as a detention ponding area. So we're looking at ultimately getting all the water off of Merritt and 6, which hold most of the water in a flood condition, and move it over to a larger detention ponding area. You'll also see throughout the community they have their own detention ponds for the most part. So we'll try to assimilate all those and move water, move drainage. Water, as you'll see in our environmental analysis, is not a significant issue at this time, but it's a significant issue in the county overall. So we did have a hard look at it, and there's an existing irrigation water district in place, and they provide water throughout the community, so it's not all well-based system. And they do not have any intention to update that system at this time, and it does serve the residents and the commercial entities who do use it adequately. Sewer, as Mr. Washington reported to us last time, we have a couple $1 million grant that we are looking to extend the main trunk line in the middle along Merritt. And also to improve as much of the facilities as we can with that money. There's currently, we are right at the end of the capacity, so this will allow future development to occur within Traver. So the environmental study we did was an initial study, mitigated negative declaration, which is a much more robust document than the environmental assessment in the existing Traver Community Plan. We did a thorough analysis looking at all the baseline conditions for traffic, water, and all the major resources. In my own experience, a lot more than you'll see typically for a community plan. But since a lot of these are issues for Tulare County, we wanted to address those. So looking at the hydrology, we looked at the baseline data starting from 2007. Our consultant, Provost and Pritchard, went through a rigorous analysis. We did both analysis at the 1.3% growth rate, so to 900 residents, and actually actual growth rate, which as it stands right now is minus 60 people. So even projecting out, we're not going to see over 800 residents anytime soon. So there is adequate capacity as we sit today, and we added the conservation measures 1 through 6 to this, so any new residents that do go in will have to comply with these measures, which are pretty much mandated by the Green Building Code. Traffic. We were concerned about traffic in the community as far as Merritt Drive and access to 99. There's only one instance where we barely trip over the threshold from C to D, but it's not a significance level. So no mitigations were required. Again, that was with a 1.3% growth rate, and no cumulative impacts that we saw that would require anything more than a mitigated negative declaration. Again, we met with Caltrans, and besides the improvements Caltrans is currently doing out there, they have no intentions to change any of the access to Traver in the immediate future.
Is it feasible to ride a bike out there? Because I know you make some suggestions of what could work. Is the pavement striped, or is there a separate path?
In our suggestion, we'll do a separate Class 2 facility, which is the designated 4 to 6 foot striped bike lane with the symbols and everything else. So that would make it feasible as we sit today. It's rough as far as the trucks that drive along Merritt and the dirt shoulders. So we would actually build out sidewalks and actually stripe bike lanes on Merritt and 6.
And the sidewalks that are existing, do they have ramps to accommodate the bikes?
Sidewalks existing. There are presently very few sidewalks out there. In fact, none that I can think of. So ADA requirements are also part of our design process for our complete streets. So they would have truncated domes and the cut curb to allow for ADA access. Again, we were not mandated to follow the county's design guidelines, so we looked at those progressively, including at bulb outs and any other amenities that we found to be feasible. We looked at biological and cultural. We did a robust study of both of these and really got down into the weeds, so to say. We did find one elderberry bush, which may or may not be protected in this region anymore. So we did include all the information, including from our consultant, on whether that is a species, that the elderberry beetle that exists in Tulare County anymore, and whether we should protect the elderberry bush out there. Outside of that, standard mitigation measures, this is really where our mitigation was for biological and for cultural. So you can read through the document, but that was fairly well addressed in the document itself. We did analysis on air quality and GHG as being major concerns these days. Again, without population growth, really, we're not going to, even with our infrastructure. Our infrastructure really analysis is really to catch up to a large extent and then try to promote some limited economic development. We do not see increase to the population or to traffic enough to trip any thresholds. And so using the Cali Mod analysis, we found less than significant no impacts for air quality and GHG. So as far as implementation, we are really focused on, again, addressing the needs of the community as we sit today and trying to create some incentives for economic development. Our implementation strategy definitely parallels that kind of thinking. So we really focused on our implementation strategy focused on stormwater retention. As that plan I presented to you, we looked at promotion of industrial and commercial on the freeway to try to capture the pass-through trips that are fairly well captured right now by Bravo and RJ. We want to improve the bus stop along Merritt. It's a sign that sits on a telephone pole, and it's really tough to see amongst the weeds along the roadway there. So we want to really signify that is a true bus stop by putting the shelter there. We do want to promote pedestrian access, including sidewalks along Merritt and 6th, and there's a lack of street lighting in the community. We want to also provide that. As we've discussed before, the mixed-use overlay, we feel it's a great opportunity to get away from our traditional zoning and our traditional land uses to allow more progressive ways of thinking about land use, and so that we can incentivize development wherein we really are, our hands are tied in a lot of regards, because it's a $15,000 hit to do a rezone, whereas we think doing the rezoning now through this process, we will allow some of these frontage properties to really bring economic development, or if they want to, there's a lot of non-compliant uses out there, so we want to also bring quite a few of these into compliance. We do want to increase the gateway signage along Merritt Drive and allow for that, and utilize strategies that we suggest in our market study, again, to increase economic development. And we really want to centralize and promote Bravo Farms and the truck stop along 6th Street. And we've talked to Caltrans and to Public Works staffs on how to make that a safer entry feature. But for the most part, people flock there, and there's a great amount of usership in that area. So we want to increase that along 6th. And so those are implementation strategies. One second. But for your knowledge and edification, in the community plan itself, we did a fiscal analysis of the improvements, and so those are there for you to review as well. Yes.
Aaron, are you in the previous slide you had up there? Are you going to also overlay in architectural guidelines for some of these things like streetlights and, appearance cosmetic things that, rather than just come in and put an amber street light, for instance, are we going to get a little bit?
Well, we will, as far as our urban design guidelines, as far as what Public Works does, and as far as what we do, we'll be really limited by the amount of funding we receive. So I would think you would see a little bit more standard amenities, and especially if we're going to do any beautification projects or anything like that, we need a funding source. So typically, you're stuck with the standard Edison street light. So it's really a matter of what we can get out of the grant, so to say. What we did do as far as design guidelines, and this is in relationship to what the private property owners will do, we do have a whole list of design guidelines for what would happen on the building side and at the backbone side, but not really for an overall concept. I think that would be difficult to work through with the limited grant funding we have. But I appreciate that comment.
Aaron, does this mixed use along the freeway, does it have an SR over?
No, there would not be a site review, so to say. What we're thinking right now is the more, and we're trying to keep it a little bit at administrative level. Ultimately, these are still, for the most part, use permits if they are not by right. So the site review would come through to you as we have the list of design guidelines here, and the more in compliant you are with those design guidelines, the more salient the process would be for you. But since we don't have any real set program in the county, we don't want to create any arbitrariness. So what we have are not discretionary they're discretionary, they're not mandatory guidelines, shoulds, not shalls. So it's just a matter of the saliency of the project moving through the process. But that will be in front of us as the planning staff and in front of the commissioners when these projects move through. You can look at the checklist and see how many checks they took off the guidelines.
Okay, thanks.
Just one quick comment before we vote on this. Almost every town that we have in Tulare County that goes along a major highway is divided by that highway. Traver is a clean slate, and it has great potential for people live in Fresno County as well as Tulare County as a place to live, affordable housing, but we're going to have to provide not only with the housing, because you could easily have someone come build 100 houses there, but you're going to need to provide the services that go along with that, like gas and cleaners and laundromats, and I think what you've done here is we're going to end up with a very nice community, But I'd like to see a hard line at 99. If there's anything west of 99, it's a highway commercial use, because Goshen is divided forever by 99, and if you're a child, it's not an easy access to one side or the other, and East Goshen has a lot of nice new housing. Looks like we have water, sewer, and if you're going to have living above businesses, you have to have services. That's a very popular thing that's coming really soon to Visalia. There's a big market for people living upstairs, but you have to be able, within 2 or 3 blocks, walk to dinner, to groceries, and all that kind of stuff. And I think there'd be several people trying to coordinate how that's going to happen. That's Mike Washam's area, but we could see Traver growing much faster than you anticipated, because I know there's several large housing developers that have had plans for Traver, and now with the zone change and the plans for the sewer, the water, I think the county's going to be pleasantly surprised by what happens to Goshen, just because it is potentially a chance for us to plan a community that's not divided by 99 and other problems. And and then in your marketing, Wayne and I have had great success in showing outside people who want to come here to provide services like a Dollar General and some others, that Traver is not just, I forget how many households, but there are more households that come to Traver to do business. You know, like Visay, we've got about 750,000 people that come to Visay every day to do business in a town that's, 130,000 people. And so someplace along the way, we've got to show that model to, in our research, that there is a potential for a lot of business there. And while you're doing this study, I think it's time to show that a lot of people would, because there's New London, there's a whole lot of little communities that nobody's ever heard of that will come to do business there. And finally, is there money for Dennis Lehman to do his tear down structures? You know, there's a special fund, I forget what that is, but it's a wonderful thing where there's eyesores, they come in and they scrape it clean. So that would be a nice. Is there money for that?
Well, let me address those last two questions. There is a limited funding based on grant funding for demolition through HUD that we did the environmental analysis for. So it was a list, and it's just a matter of going back out for more funding. And some of those were torn down. Not all of those on the list have been done yet, so they've been able to move a few around, but there is always the option to go out for more funding for that. As far as the market study, this market study was just for Traver, but we're also doing a 99 corridor study currently, so your suggestions will be put into that study. We really want Traver to move forward. As is, we did limit the urban development boundary intentionally at this point. We have to make a certain finding that there's about 80% utilized, more than 80% utilized land to expand the urban development boundary, and that's not the case. But we did rezone the northern areas of the Traver community for potential housing, which we see immediately. The thought is if there is future development interest for housing, they would have the funding basically to, one, it has to come along with the finding that we've already done everything we can infill-wise, and then look to expand the urban development boundary. There's a natural delineation going west of, not natural, but a man-made delineation going west of 99 for any future development, and that's infrastructure. If you look throughout the communities, Pixley, Goshen, Early Mart is a little bit better off, but Traver especially, there's obviously infrastructure issues. And so if there's any development interest going that direction, they're going to have to pony up quite a bit of money for backbone and for to a large extent do it themselves, you know. So what they could hook up to our sewer and water will incentivize it a little bit, but there's only so much we could do with the money we can get from grants. So we're not putting a hard line in the sand saying it can't be done, but in the general plan policies, the urban development boundary is the hard line. So but we're not trying to limit development either.
But there's a real potential for a real Traver kind of town center, something to grow into.
I think at the intersection of Merritt and 6 especially, and going along Merritt Drive, I think that's why we're looking to redesignate or reposition those properties with the mixed-use overlay. The by right will allow a lot of projects to be more in compliance, so you won't have that issue hanging over these properties' heads anymore. And I think that'll also incentivize and create more of a town center along Merritt and 6.
Okay.
So I'll quickly read out the recommendations so you can make a motion here. Basically, we're looking for not as stated 4 motions, but we can do this all at once. What we are is recommending to the Board of Supervisors to adopt the initial study and mitigated negative declaration. We are recommending to the Board of Supervisors to adopt the general plan amendment 14-003 to update and amend the land use and circulation elements. We are looking to recommend to the Board of Supervisors to approve zone change PZ 14-002, establishing a mixed-use overlay combining zone and apply said zone to reclassify properties within the Traver UDB, and that is relationship to Section 16 adjustments for by right, and to recommend the Board of Supervisors approve an amendment to Section 16 of the ordinance number 352 zone change PZ 14-003 to allow additional by right uses within the Traver UDB. And by way of reference on 14-002, that will also reclassify the district boundaries as Dave presented to you in the PowerPoint presentation.
Somebody say so moved.
This is a public hearing.
This is
it is. Okay.
Public hearing.
Sorry about that. This is a public hearing. I'll open up the that portion of the meeting here to the public. Anybody would like to come forward and make comments on the Traver general plan update?
You know, since no one's here to talk, I just want to just compliment staff for their work on this project. Aaron said we started in February. Here we are in October for a general plan amendment, a community plan update, which in the past could take anywhere to 2 to 5 years to do. We're 8 months into it. We've had complete community support on this and a lot of outreach meetings, and his effort and his staff's effort can be commended on this. I'd like to highlight the economic development piece of it. As far as expanding to the west side of 99, that's way in the future, if ever. We don't have our utilities under the rail line yet, so we have that restrictional. So we're not servicing the highway commercial yet with sewer or water yet. So that's what we're looking for, grant funding to be able to address that. And finally, the urban development boundary, not expanding the boundaries. That goes with the overall concept of sustainability and not expanding out into ag lands. What this does with the mixed-use overlay has encouraged businesses, will allow them to establish within the urban boundaries. Instead of looking for easier, cheaper solutions out in ag land, there's incentives to come here because it's by right. They're not having to go through a use permit. They're not having to go through that public hearing process. They can come in and develop. So we're incentivizing a development within our existing urban development boundaries, and that's a big key highlight of this innovative approach that we're taking.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll close the public testimony portion, and now we'll move it back to the commission.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors adopt the initial study and mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring reporting program for the Traver Community Plan, update GPA 14-003, 14-002, and PC 14-003.
Four motions, or are we going to do it at once?
Yeah, we could do all these at once.
All at once.
Okay,
And then
keep going, Bill.
I'll do 2, 3, and 4 as presented.
Presented by Mr. Bont earlier. Okay,
I'll second that.
roll call.
Gong,
Yes.
Millies,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Diaz,
Yes.
Whitlatch,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Good job, guys. Good.
We could have added on a combination to that.
That's right, huh?
Good staff.
Okay.
A pay raise for staff. I make that motion.
Okay, now, we've discussed 5F a little bit earlier. This is the general plan amendment for Porterville. And I think we're going to have, we won't be acting on that today, but we will open that up to the staff and the public here in a little bit for information purposes. And so go ahead, Aaron, give us information on GPA 14-008.
Chairman Diaz, Commission, Aaron Bach, Tulare County Resource Management Agency. Before you today is a Porterville Area Community Plan update. We are giving this presentation for informational only purposes. We are anticipating bringing this back to this commission at the next commission hearing, and that at that time we will be requesting recommendation to the board. Just for your edification, this is aspect of the Porterville settlement that Dave will discuss a little bit here in more detail. So the 8-month process that what Trevor went through has been expedited to about a 1-month process for us, but it's really garnering and utilizing Porterville's general plan and Porterville's existing general plan and EIR and implementing that for the East Porterville area and the areas to the east that were presently county land. So in our analysis, we'll be looking at the planning, infrastructure, and development standards and the environmental findings of consistency in compliance with the Porterville General Plan and General Plan Environmental Impact Report. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dave.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Dave Bryant, Tulare County Resource Management Agency. Just by way of a general background, the Porterville Area Community Plan, which was originally adopted by the Board of Supervisors back on or about 1990, provides for what is currently referred to in the general plan update as a county-adopted city general plan, which would provide for a planning framework in and around the unincorporated areas around the city of Porterville, which would include several elements as part of that. It would include a land use plan, an urban development boundary reflective of a 20-year planning time frame, and an urban area boundary, which was previously looked at as maybe the ultimate growth area of a community, but that was more recently identified as part of the general plan update as perhaps a 50-year line in an area where the city and the county could coordinate future development and also preserve plan lines and the ability to not preclude development on sites that might be utilized for public utility related structures. In essence, this request was brought about, as Aaron mentioned, as a part of discussions between the city of Porterville and the county of Tulare. The city requested that the county update the Porterville Area Community Plan, and on August 26th, the Board of Supervisors initiated a general plan amendment in order to provide for the eventual consideration of an updated community plan for the unincorporated area around the city of Porterville. The proposed general plan amendment is GPA 14008 and is intended to update the Porterville Area Community Plan that's currently in place that was adopted in 1990. In essence, the plan would involve several major components. The first one would be an amendment to the planning framework element, which is the old urban boundaries element that was updated again as part of the Board of Supervisors action back in 2012. That would provide for an updated urban development boundary and urban area boundary. In recognition that the urban area boundary could, as well as the urban development boundary, may increase, the existing Foothill Growth Management Plan is currently adopted. The boundaries for that plan generally align on the 600-foot elevation line generally, and the areas that are immediately adjacent to the city of Porterville that are in the Foothill Growth Management Plan, if the recommendations that are presented as part of this proposal are adopted, would actually move in and supersede those areas that are currently designated under the Foothill Growth Management Plan. So in essence, as the urban area boundary may increase for the Porterville Area Community Plan, it would correspondingly take away area that's currently designated as part of the Foothill Growth Management Plan and place it within the area of the Porterville Area Community Plan. Traditionally, the amendment, as most of you are aware, would also include a land use plan, an updated land use diagram, and a transportation and circulation element. As part of the discussions between the City of Porterville and the County of Tulare, there was a recommendation on the part of the city that the county include and consider as part of future development projects the utilization of city standards and designations. So the draft plan as it's currently proposed, included in Appendix D1, includes all of the city development standards that were adopted by the City of Porterville. Lastly, would require an amendment to the open space element. Anytime an urban development boundary or urban area boundary is expanded into areas that were previously designated as open space, then it also requires an amendment to recognize the urban expansion area that's being expanded into those areas as a result of the potential expansion, again, of the urban development boundary or urban area boundary.
Just
Yes.
a question, Dave, and I don't know how much you're going to present today, but we're going to continue this thing, and I don't think there's anybody here from Porterville.
There is, yes.
I thought they were the. I'm sorry. I thought you were with the grand jury people. All right. So we're all right then to accept testimony. I just didn't want to accept testimony on this thing here and not have them present. That's all.
The City of Porterville is present, and they are in full compliance with what we're doing.
Okay, that's fine. Then go ahead, Dave. I'm
Okay.
sorry to interrupt you.
No problem at all. Thank you.
The people from Porterville.
Similar with the Traver plan that was recently adopted by your commission, the general plan would be utilized in looking at conformance with the proposed Porterville Area Community Plan, and there would be consistency amongst planning framework, urban boundaries, land use, transportation and circulation, open space elements, and the Foothill Growth Management Plan. As I mentioned a few minutes earlier, there would be an update to the land use and transportation and circulation diagram. The next two slides, very briefly, would discuss the proposed concept that we are looking at currently at this time. The area here in red would be generally the proposed urban development boundary. The urban area boundary would be this blue line, which would involve an expansion, or both lines would involve an expansion of their current location. In regards to land use generally, it would be recommended that the land uses that would be adopted as part of the plan would be consistent as adopted and envisioned by the City of Porterville, including their recommended boundary lines. Just as a brief footnote, the area that's currently designated here, which is the East Porterville area, there are no recommended changes to the urban development boundary, but the land use designations as provided for in the community plan would be updated again as per the recommendations from the City of Porterville.
Dave?
Yes.
How about the northeast corner there? We've approved some subdivisions. Does it include all those subdivisions in the northwest corner?
Let me go back to that. Which
Like our
area are you
standards
referring to?
different. Well, I can't see that far, but we approved some subdivisions where your cursor is. That's an old term for that.
Up in this area here?
Yeah, right, to the west, yeah.
To the west.
They still seem to come under Porterville. They're pretty good sized subdivisions, so.
That's a good point that I would, and then I'll turn it over to Aaron. Basically, there would be a distinction between development within the urban development boundary and development that would be proposed in the urban area boundary. Development that would be proposed in the urban area boundary, typically there would be exceptions that would be applied if it's a small, rural residential type subdivision. Typical urban standards would not be applied to those particular parcels, but there would be a recognition that any plan lines for the future right-of-way of roads or any public utility structures that would be proposed in that area, such as drainage basins or any other facilities, there would be appropriate setbacks that would be honored in order to protect those areas. Conversely, areas that would be located within the urban development boundary, we would apply or would recommend the application of the City of Porterville development standards.
Thank you.
Just as a matter of, for the record, the existing subdivisions that are grandfathered in, if they're still alive, would obviously be grandfathered in. But if they're within 1,300 feet of any existing infrastructure, they'd have to connect. As Dave mentioned, the moving forward, and might as well handle this matter now. Moving forward, any parcel maps could still, within that area, still use the county standards, but with the recommendation, I'm sure, from the city to use their standards. But we'd have to do all the setbacks that are required. But any subdivisions moving forward have to use the city standards.
The other component that will be shown on the next slide coming up would be the circulation and transportation plan. That would recognize the functional classification system for local collector, arterial, and freeway systems as proposed under the Porterville Area Community Plan, consistent with the functional classification system that was proposed by the city. I'll turn it over to Aaron to discuss the remaining portions of the presentation.
Commission, I'm going to move through these matters relatively quickly, and this is also just for the record. As Dave discussed, the classifications of those roadways are based on the city standards, so any frontage improvements or any necessary improvements to existing properties out there would be based on the city's classifications of their streets. Unless, again, if they're parcel maps, but again, all the setbacks would have to be in place for any of the roadways, and they are a much higher standard than we currently have in the county, so it's a better amenity. Water, East Porterville and the area to the east of that is generally on wells. As you can see in the media these days, there's a small area that is on the city system, but any expansion of the city water system into East Porterville or going east would be part of an extraterritorial agreement, and it's not something the county's necessarily involved in. Again, we are our limitation of our jurisdiction is over the wells that are out there. As far as sewer, this is the Porta Vista PUD area. They also connect into the city's sewer systems, so there's no real change there. Just a question of whether to hook up to septic or to their system is really within the jurisdiction of Porta Vista to a large extent. But as far as the county is concerned, if someone still wanted to do septic and they're outside of that 1,300-foot area to hook up to the city's sewer, they would still be subject to our environmental health policies in regards to septic. Drainage, again, largely
jurisdictions within the county, and so the drainage facilities are mostly surface drainage. And if there's any expansion of the city systems in the area, that would be incumbent upon the city to expand again with any additional requirements from LAFCO.
Aaron,
yes.
We had this issue with ponding basins, and the only difference between Porterville and the county is one is deeper, not as wide; one is wider, not as deep. And for sake of being confused, it seems like we're all on the same page. It should be one or the other, either way.
Well, again, we're adopting, as that last statement says, we're adopting the city standards. So it's really not a matter of East Porterville using the county standards anymore. It's going to be the city standards moving forward. And those are all, when the document provided to you, the last large appendices is all the city standards, which is more robust than anything we have in the county. So it'll be better in the long run. So that concludes staff's presentation. We don't have a motion for you today. We will bring this matter back on the agenda for next time for a recommendation to the board for approval. And hopefully any discussions currently going with the city of Porterville and any changes to this plan can be made within that time frame.
Thank you, Aaron. So I'll open up the public comment period. So please come forward and accept my apologies. I don't mean to overlook you folks. We usually have some grand jury people sitting out there listening very intently like you. I could tell you guys were really listening, so I thought
we're planners. We can't help but listen. I'm Jenny Byers. I am the interim city community development director, so my address is 291 North Main, Porterville. I've also brought with me Julie Phillips. She's community development manager. We also would really like to thank staff for their efforts with this document. They have moved forward expeditiously, and so city staff is still reviewing some areas of the document, and they've just done a fine job, and so we really appreciate the effort that county staff has put into this. So.
Okay, great. Any questions for no?
Is that Julie Phillips?
That is Julie Phillips. The infamous Julie Phillips.
This is not planning commission business, but your interim chief of police was my chief of police when I was a policeman. So tell him Bill Whitlatch says hello, and I'm coming over for donuts and coffee. So
I will write that down.
Okay. Any other testimony from the public? Okay. Seeing none, I will close it at this point, but open it again at a later date. I'm open to comments or a motion or something for a continue.
You want us to save this?
You don't need a motion at this time, but what was that?
You want us to save this document?
Yeah, save that document. If we're there, the idea is that when we come back, you've heard the background information. If there's any changes, we'll highlight those changes, and then we can make a motion for recommendation for approval at that time.
Aaron, okay. Can we continue? I'd like a motion to continue this and to leave the public comment open, actually. And it'll just be open this whole time, and then
all right.
I think let's make that motion that we move it to the date that you recommend and leave the public comment open.
Do we have a date, Alabama, specific?
November 12th.
November 12th. Okay, and we will continue this and the public testimony portion to that date. Have a second?
I made the motion. Do we have a second? No.
Roll call.
Gong.
Yes.
Millies.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Diaz.
Yes.
Whitlatch.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes. Okay, that motion has passed. Continue this. All right. Where are we here, folks?
We only have 3 more meetings till we get a new chairman, huh?
Well, aren't you glad to hear that? Okay.
When do we need to vote on that, Mr. Chairman?
I don't know. It's not in the agenda today.
Bring that up to
Number
the
6
staff.
is a director's report. I think we're through with that, right? There's several pages. Okay. Yeah, we're on.
As far as the chairman, commissioners, I think we don't need a director's report today, given our time frames. Hopefully, we'll be able to update you on our progress on our other community plans at our next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Number 7 is the Planning Commission discussion on items or request for future agenda issues. Anything? Anybody? Nothing today? Everybody's
Wayne
tired?
and I are going to the annual meeting, so.
You're both going? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I did want to mention that we can still take sign-ups for that if anybody's interested. There'll be a tour of the wetlands in San Joaquin County. These are in Merced County. These are the largest contiguous wetlands anywhere, and they're quite proud of it, being that it's, you know, buffered on ag on all sides. So there's a lot of relevant issues for Tulare County.
Can I bring my shotgun? It's
If-
duck
If
season,
you get
isn't
a
it?
tag or a
It's
hunting
duck season, isn't it?
hunting season right now?
Hopefully it's wet.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they got some water. They really do. Los Banos has some water, and it's very interesting. I think everybody's going to enjoy it. And then, of course, UC Merced. If you haven't seen that, you're going to enjoy that tour too. So.
Okay, anything else? We're adjourned until November 12th, 2014. John, what time?